Good evening, everybody. Nyama, Wurundjeri Woiwurrung Gulin, Goonganinu Bik Wenup Darabandari, Nyariana Nyanga Bik Ban Ba Nyagu, Gagukal Nangit Bambuth Yellingbu Ba Gamaji. I acknowledge the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people on whose land Darebin Council stands. My apologies. I recognise their continuing connection with land, water and culture and pay respect to their elders past, present and emerging. It's delightful to see members of the gallery back for our meetings in 2020. I do hope that everyone had a great festive season and a good break over the summer. Membership of this meeting is as listed in the agenda. We have no apologies. That brings us to disclosures of conflict of interest. Councillors, does anyone have a conflict to disclose this evening? No, there are none. Brings us to confirmation of the minutes of the council meeting. Could I have someone that's moved by Councillor Messina, seconded by Councillor Lassurf? All those in favour? That motion is carried. And that brings us to question and submission time. Before we commence with questions and submissions, I would like to remind everyone that our council chamber is both a workplace and a public space, and as such we expect it to be safe and respectful for all members of the staff, of council and of course of the community. So I'll ask people who have a question to keep their question brief. There is no need for a lengthy preamble. And for those questions that were received earlier today, I'll provide an answer. If you have a question, once those questions that were submitted beforehand, you'll also have an opportunity to come up and that may be answered or it may be taken on notice. So I'll start with questions that were received beforehand. The first question is from Mr. Sean Power. Is Mr. Power here? I believe Mr. Power was planning to attend, so I'm actually going to put his question at the end, just in case he comes in. And I'll therefore move to Mr. Paul Walsh. Is Mr. Walsh here? Mr. Walsh, would you like to come up and ask your question?
Hi, my name is Paul Walsh, and Mayor Rennie, thank you for the opportunity, and to councillors as well. In October 2018, Ivanhoe Grammar School opened the doors to its new campus located on the outskirts of La Trobe University in the terrace buildings 1 and 2 of Ernst Jones Drive. This dedicated Year 9 campus provides students with a year-long university-based learning experience in an Australian first initiative made possible through our partnership with La Trobe University. From when the concept was first mooted, all 3 councils associated with the initiative, Banyule through the location of the Ivanhoe campus, Whittlesea through the Plenty campus and Darebin through the La Trobe University, were genuinely excited about the project and the myriad of opportunities that it would provide in engaging Year 9 students at a most vulnerable age. Fast forward 15 months and the program is thriving. Students are engaged and the work they are producing is exceptional. Physical education is a university recognised as a significantly important part of the Year 9 curriculum. Given the screen-dominated world that our young people live in, and any opportunity to introduce them to, engage them in, and ultimately foster the love of outside physical activity should be encouraged to the max. Now, unfortunately, our Year 9 students at the university campus are banned from conducting their PE lessons on an oval that is a mere 120 metres from the front of the entrance. Now, some key facts about the oval use. 1, Ivanhoe Grammar's proposed use of the oval for PE lessons.
Mr. Walsh, I did say we don't do lengthy preambles, so
Right.
if you're able to move to the question, that would be great. Thank you.
Not a problem. Our 500 families who have students attending Ivanhoe Grammar School who live in the city of Darebin would like to know why. Why are young students being denied access to an identified oval for supervised PE lessons?
Mr. Walsh, thank you for your question, and I do obviously have the full preamble. Springthorpe Common is designed as a passive open space. It is neither constructed, managed or intended for use as a sports oval. Changing the use of the oval would require significant investment from council and would need to be agreed with the surrounding community. Council has received feedback from local residents objecting to the use of the passive open space by the school. Ivanhoe Grammar was informed by council officers that formal PE would not be allowed on Springthorpe Common prior to the opening of the Bundoora campus. However, council has offered free use of any of our sports ovals for PE classes and is willing to work with the school's administration to find alternatives that would meet the school's requirements.
2 questions. One, I'd like to know how many people protested. And the second one is a passive open space that has goalposts at either end, a boundary line and a cricket pitch in the middle. That sounds more like an oval than an open passive space to me.
Okay, I'll take that second as a comment, but in relation to the first question, I will get officers to follow up with you in relation to that, because I obviously don't have that information on hand.
That's fine. How many protests would actually make a decision?
That's not how decisions work, so I'll get officers to get back to you, because in relation to the question of how many people, I don't have an answer, so we'll take that on notice. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
The next question is from Ms Nicola Coles. Ms Coles, would you like to come up and ask your question?
Yes, my name is Nicola Coles. I've already sent a statement earlier to the Mayor and the councillors and to the CEO, so I won't go over that again, much as I would like to, but I think I'm not allowed to. I just asked 2 questions. The first one is, how can Darebin Council justify destroying the Callistaman garden bed at the southeast corner of Penders Park, which provides dense canopy and a flourishing habitat for numerous fauna species, in the light of their outstanding decision as the first municipal council in the world to declare the climate emergency now impacting all life? And the second question, I don't expect an answer right now, I suppose. Second question, what additional budget costs would be incurred by the simple exclusion of the Callistaman Garden from the overall plan for an All Abilities Adventure Play Space, given that this exclusion would eliminate the expense of the replanting and maintenance operation to replace the natural mini forest with an artificial sensory forest walk, which would be similar to other established areas of the park?
Thank you very much for those 2 questions. Improving biodiversity through the city is a really high priority for this council. The works we've started at Penders Park also include planting many more native trees than are currently there, and I'm confident the habitat will be much better as a result. The main reason that council has planned to remove the 4 Callistamans is to create the All Abilities Play Space at Penders Park. The design in this area has been really carefully considered with deep community involvement. This location is really important for the All Abilities Play Space because it's close to parking and the toilet. We also heard that making sure parents can see their kids is critical. That being said, we would love to find a win-win solution if that's possible. I understand that officers contacted you today to let you know that the General Manager has decided to convene a design workshop to see if there is a design tweak that could achieve that win-win outcome. Works will be kept on hold for around 8 weeks to make this possible. We still expect to complete construction of stage 1 of the play space this financial year. With respect to your second question about costs aren't available at this stage. Such a change would be a significant change to the contract, and costs would be subject to negotiation. I do want to explain that the main design considerations in relation to this corner of the park are not about costs. Rather, what community consultation found over the last 2 years is that this location is really important for the All Abilities Play Space because it's close to parking and the toilet. We also heard that making sure parents can see their kids is critical, but we hope that the upcoming design workshop will find a win-win solution. Thanks very much.
I don't have the right of any further comment, do I?
No, you don't, I'm sorry, but you're very welcome to email us again. Thank you. The next question that I have is from Melanie Welch. Melanie is not attending, so I'll read her question for her. Please advise why the letterbox drop from Darebin Council provided to 3,000 residents on the upgrade to Penders Park does not have the final place-based design included. The design that has been used is missing key elements of the design as agreed by Council with the Community Project Control Group. Please confirm the playground that is being built for Penders Park is as per the final design signed off and adopted by Council for Stage 1, with $350,000 being allocated by Council in the 2019-20 budget. Thank you for this question, Melanie. Yes, elements discussed with the PCG are part of the design for the works. This image was simplified compared to the design detail that the PCG saw, and not all elements are specifically labelled or drawn. I'm sorry for any confusion. Our officers are happy to go through any of the further detail if you do have questions. The next question is from Mr. Jeffrey Richards. Mr. Richards, would you like to come up to ask your question?
Thank you, Mayor Rennie, and thank you for your kind welcome back comments. I think you're a bit more organised than me because I've managed to send off the question without making a copy of it tonight.
We could give you a copy if you'd like.
No, it's fine. My
okay.
summary now will be better, probably. And I didn't have available an infant to tell me how to attach the photographs, so I've handed them in tonight.
Thank you, and I've got those photographs.
I'm referring to the small story reserve, councillors, and it is small, but it is used, and it has a children's playground in it. And to my surprise, people arrive by car to go to the thing, so it gets some use. I'm referring to the back fence of it. We did do some work on the side fence. It was done, thank you, councillors, and fixed up, and some storm damage in the laneway has been rectified. But the rear part that I have photographed, the rear of the reserve itself, is propped up on one side by dangerous props, but further along, palings have come off altogether, 3 separate gaps from it. That's what needs the attention. I believe it's complicated, even having sent the question. I happened to run into one of the residents along Northern Hay Road, which is the body corporate there, but there are about 3 body corporates and a unit owner, and I think they all threw up their hands at the thought of doing something. It needs council to get the act together, I think. But there's no doubt the fence needs repairs. Could we have attention to that, please?
Mr. Richards, thank you for drawing that to our attention. Council has lodged a pathway request 461498 to have the fence inspected. A response letter or telephone call will be made to you to notify you of the outcome and when the repairs will occur. You are able, of course, just to phone that kind of matter through to council, and we will be able to action a matter such as that without waiting for a council meeting. So please do feel free to contact us with that kind of request at any time.
Thank you. It's just been over Christmas. I thought I wouldn't bug anyone until the new year.
No, you're absolutely welcome to phone that kind of request at any time at all. Thank you, Mr. Richards.
Thank you, Mary.
I'll just go back to the first question, which I moved past initially. That was from Mr. Sean Power. Is Mr. Power here? No, I'll read out his question. Hi, I would like to know what Council is doing to maintain the cleanliness and functionality of Arthurton Road between St George's Road and Nicholson Street. With the steady increase in traffic, both by foot and vehicles, the area has become noticeably run down. After an initial graffiti cleaning project last year, following a request from myself, almost all of it has returned. Footpath garden beds are filled with rubbish. Trees that were previously planted by the council have been neglected, while other plants are overgrown and require attention. The bridge over the Mary Creek also looks tired and needs an urgent paint job. It's a horrible welcome home for residents returning to the area and an incredibly disappointing first glimpse of our beautiful suburb for everyone else. What strategies will Council put in place to fix these issues and maintain the area moving forward? I will be attending the meeting to note the conversation and intend on campaigning on the issue moving forward in 2020. Mr. Power, thank you for your question. Council recently replaced several trees that had reached the end of their useful life expectancy between St George's Road and the Merry Creek Bridge. These trees are currently under contract to be maintained, including watering, mulching and weeding as required to ensure successful establishment. Our contractors have been instructed to ensure these trees are well maintained. Any trees that are not currently performing and will require removal will be replaced as part of the next planting season commencing in May 2020. Council has undertaken a graffiti audit of the area and written to residents. Council is obligated to write to the owners of private properties with graffiti and then allow 10 days from the issue of that letter for the property owner to respond before Council undertakes any rectification. Letters were issued to private property owners on the 10th of January 2020, which means the removal works will commence on Tuesday the 21st of January 2020. These works will be completed before the 3rd of February 2020. Those are all the questions that I've received prior to the meeting. I'll now invite community members who haven't asked 2 questions to come up and ask a question if you have one. Are there any further questions from members of the community? Mr Nugent raised his hand, so we'll do that first.
Thank you, Mayor Rennie, and also those kind wishes to you and the staff and fellow councillors that you all had a great break. First question, Mayor Rennie, is the question was asked on the 6th of November 19, and to date I have not received a satisfactory reply. The question is about the gag the council has placed on me asking questions.
Mr Nugent, I object to the language. Can you please reframe that?
The question, what, the gag?
Yes, there is no gag.
Well, all right, I'll change the wording. Mayor Rennie, I think it's pretty poor that you're not allowing the word the gag because it's what it is. But anyway, I'll change that. The question is about me not allowed to ask council about the not asking questions on the Donoff Dole master plan. Firstly, I believe my democratic rights have been taken away from me by this council. In the letter given to me, it does not state a time period. Mayor Rennie, have I got a right to appeal against this decision? And Mayor Rennie, since I've asked the question, another 3 months has elapsed.
Mr Nugent, thank you for your question. You are obviously very welcome to come to any council meeting, and in fact you do come, and you are welcome to ask 2 questions on any topic, as long as it's not derogatory or insulting or offensive. You're welcome to ask those 2 questions at any council meeting, and you regularly exercise that right. So I would continue to encourage you to continue to come to council meetings and ask questions that you have. I'm sorry if there's any question that hasn't been followed up from a previous meeting. I will ask our officers to review all questions that you've asked and make sure that they have all been answered.
Will I get the answer to those questions I've asked in this particular question? What I got was a copy of the minutes, which I objected to, of the minutes, and I was very, disappointed in what you said to me that particular night, and I like the questions I have asked to be answered. Has my democratic rights been taken away? There was no time period in the letter. Have I got a right to appeal? And what rights of appeal I've got and so forth. That's all I want answered. I don't want to go into all the details, just a straightforward answer. Yes, no, whatever it may be, you decide. That's all I'm asking for, Mayor Rennie. I'm not trying to be derogative to anyone here. All I'm doing is saying the gag is, well, I can't come and ring council officers up about the asking questions.
Mr Nugent, I think we're talking about 2 different things. You are welcome to ask 2 questions in this council meeting. That's as correct. You do. You are not welcome, and this has been explained to you, to call and ask for other actions or things to happen in relation to Donoff Dole. I will take on notice the question of for what period that is, and that has been put in place because of the inordinate amount of time, of officer time, that was required to service your request. So I will take that on notice and get an answer to you.
Well, put it this
Thank
way,
you.
it doesn't answer the questions what I've asked in this
No,
particular...
and I've said I'll take that on notice and get an answer to
And
you.
will I
So-
get the answer to this question I've asked? What I've asked for in this particular question. I'm not asking for anything else. I'm just asking for the questions, what time.
Mr Nugent, if you could put that request in writing, that will make sure that each bit... Yep,
it's
great.
in-
So can you make sure we have that in writing so that we
It
can
has
go
been in
through in detail the points that you raise and make sure that your questions
you,
are
Mayor-
answered?
Mayor Rennie.
Thank you.
Mayor Rennie, this question was asked on the 2nd of December 2019. I have been receiving correspondence that the south-east corner of Donoff West is in the master plan. Could you please advise in simple, plain English and not a bureaucratic letter that doesn't explain anything what has been planned for the south-east corner at Donoff Reserve, Donoff West?
Mr Nugent, thank you equally for that question. I don't have the master plan in front of me and so I'm unable to answer that. I'll take that on notice and get an answer to you.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are there further questions? Ms Coles, you have asked 2 questions. So your petition is going to be tabled by Councillor Lassurf. So you can give her the hard copy. She's got an electronic copy, or Susie will take that. So we will get to petitions as the next item on the agenda. So that'll be dealt with very soon. Yes, Mario.
Mario Fennick, yeah. I just got one question. The water station in the park at Penders, is it going to be relocated and when?
Thank you for that question. I know that that is of concern to you. I might actually get Mr Hewitt to comment on that because I think he'll be able to give you an answer at Penders Park.
Through you, Mayor Rennie, thanks so much for the question. Yes, we were able to accommodate a drinking fountain for dogs also in the park. We'll just work with our design team to put it in an appropriate place that fits with the master plan and meets with the needs of the dog walkers.
Can that be a bottle refilling station where, because there's a lot of bottles in the morning, a lot of plastic bottles left over and crap like that?
Through you, Mayor Rennie, I'm sure we can accommodate that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? No, we'll move therefore to the next item on the agenda, which is petitions. Councillor Surf.
Thank you, Mayor Rennie. I would like to move a motion that we receive a petition and refer it to the Chief Executive Officer. The petition was signed by 216 people stating that we, the undersigned park users and Darebin residents, petition the council to reconsider their decision to remove the bottlebrush trees and shrubs located at the southeast corner of Penders Park. At a time of climate emergency, healthy established native vegetation should be preserved as habitat for native birds and pollinators, to clean the air we breathe, to store carbon, to reduce temperature, and as a natural area for children to play adjacent to the proposed adventure playground.
Thank you. So moved. Seconded by Councillor McCarthy. All those in favour? That motion has been accepted and will be referred as Councillor Surf has identified. I will just comment that I believe the number of signatures in the copy that have been given to Susie may be higher than what you said. They will all be taken into account. Thank you. Thank you, Ms Coles, for your efforts with that petition and for having that tabled at the council meeting tonight. Further petitions? Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mayor. This petition is entitled Tackling Darebin's Wood Smoke Pollution. I'd like to take leave of council to present this petition regarding wood smoke pollution. The petition reads, and the petition is signed by 41 people. The petition reads, we, the undersigned residents of Darebin and other concerned individuals, petition the council to address air pollution from domestic wood burning as a major contributor to speeding up global warming and serious health hazards. Air pollution is recognised by the World Health Organisation as the world's largest environmental health risk, and smoke from wood heaters is a major source of air pollution in Darebin. To reduce Darebin's contribution to global warming and protect the health of residents, we petition the council to implement the following coordinated campaign. A, as a first step, a proactive community education campaign to increase residents' understanding of the harmful health and environmental impacts of wood smoke. This should explain that particle pollution from wood heaters speeds up global warming, causes strokes, cancers and heart and lung disease, and affects children's health. It should also encourage residents to switch to cleaner heating using local media, council publications and piggybacking on other residents' communications, and should be integrated into health and environmental education materials and programs. B, establish a system for routine monitoring of air pollution levels in Darebin using low-cost air quality monitoring equipment. Where high pollution levels are identified, council should implement actions to reduce pollution in these areas. C, explore programs and strategies to discourage the use of wood heaters, including designating parts of Darebin emission-free zones, requiring a permit with a fee, and yearly registration, and parts of Darebin, and other conditions for operating a wood heater. A future ban on wood heaters, proactively targeting high wood smoke polluters with incentives and assistance to change to non-polluting heating. And finally, D, assess the current effectiveness of the council's response to wood smoke complaints through an independent review. This petition be received and a report on the matter be presented to the March 16 Ordinary Council meeting. So quite a long petition there. And 41 signatures to that, Mayor, and I'll hand that up to our officers.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. So moved and seconded by Councillor Lassurf. All those in favour? Thank you. That petition is also entered into the record. We will now move to urgent business. I have not received any items of urgent business, so we'll move straight to consideration of reports. Before we begin any debate on consideration of reports, I'll ask the relevant officers to item 8.1 to come up to the table. Thank you. And councillors, I'd now like to ask if any councillor has any questions relating to item 8.1 on the agenda. No, there being no questions, I'll ask if there's a motion. Councillor Amir.
I'm happy to move the motion as written in the agenda.
Thank you. A seconder? Councillor Williams, thank you. Councillor Amir, over to you.
Thanks, Mayor Rennie. This is quite a common process we undertake here in the council chambers, the proposed sale of a discontinued road. The motion we have here is to commence the statutory procedures, so it's not the end of the line, it's progressing things along towards what the residents would like. In this case, there was consultation with all of the landowners around the relevant road and interest from 3 residents at 184, 186 and 188 Wood Street. So I'm happy to support this recommendation for that to occur, as this land is not currently being used by council.
Thank you, Councillor Amir. Councillor Williams.
I just want to stipulate that the discontinuance is also at 75 to 81 Maple Street to 182 to 188 Wood Street, and council will go ahead by advertising that in the Gazette, and I believe there's been no objections, and there's 3 counterparties that are actually interested in purchasing that parcel of land.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Are there any further speakers? There being none, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That motion is carried. That brings us, thank you to the officers, to item 8.2. I'll ask the relevant staff to come up for item 8.2. Councillors, before I seek a motion or we enter debate, I'd like to ask if anyone has any questions of the officers. No, there being no questions, I'll ask if there's a motion. Councillor Newton?
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. We'll get that up on the board if we can. Great. And is there a seconder? Councillor Amir. Thank you. Councillor Newton.
Thank you, Mayor Rennie. So this is a really important submission that we're making to the Victorian Legislative Council about a submission into the inquiry into homelessness in Victoria. Just wanted to start by saying that at the end of last year, I went to a community forum that was put on by East Reservoir Neighbours for Change, which had a person with a lived experience of homelessness. It had the CEO of Mary Outreach Support Services, and it had a lot of local people who, this is one of the areas with low socioeconomic status in Darebin, but I think it's one of these things where the people who sometimes have the least are willing to help the most, and it was such a fruitful discussion, but I think it was clear that more needs to be done and that more people are at risk of homelessness than ever. That goes for Darebin, that goes for across the state and across the country. So just a couple of things I want to highlight about the submission that we're making is just how bad things are getting. So, for example, we talk about how only 1.9% of rental housing is affordable to those on Centrelink payments and across Victoria. We've also got 80,000 people waiting for social housing, and that includes 25,000 children across the state. And we've been doing as much work as we can in this area. So, regular attendees might know that in our last budget, we made sure that we were doing more for homelessness. So what we've done at our level is we've done things like a shower trial at Reservoir Leisure Centre and Northcote Aquatic and Leisure Centre so people can access showers. We're going to do a street count this year so we have a better idea of how many homeless we do have in Darebin. And there's also an assertive outreach program run by Mary Outreach Support Services, which is helping assist people who going out to them. And the other thing I just want to mention is that things are getting harder pretty much across the board. For example, in the last 20 years, the number of low-income households under housing stress has doubled. I think one other really important thing to note is that from the Darebin perspective, we would love to see more mandatory zoning, so inclusionary zoning, and we'd be quite keen to go as high as 28% in Darebin, but currently it has to be negotiated, which makes it very hard to achieve. And the other one I think that's worth mentioning is that currently kids who are in out-of-home care, they kind of have to cease that, or payments cease at 18, and while there's a trial for that to go up to 21, that really should be rolled out further. We're doing work in that space, including the Kids Undercover program, and we're also looking at building more social housing in Town Hall Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Newton. Councillor Amir.
So I'm very happy to support the submission that has been put forward here by our staff. Thank you very much, team, for your hard work on that. As we know, housing and homelessness is such a challenge across Melbourne, well, across Australia, including in Darebin, with an estimated 1,500 people experiencing homelessness in Melbourne. It's one of those challenges where the answer is very simple and very complicated. Very simple to be blunt, we just need more housing. We need more public housing. We need more affordable housing. But also there is nuance in that complexity, and I'm really happy to see in this submission a focus on targeted prevention for particular groups, including young people, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, people living with a disability, and women over 55, as well as some of the broader scale changes to increasing funding for public housing and for the maintenance of existing housing. Also, as mentioned by Councillor Newton, the fact that kids in care basically get kicked out of home when they turn 18 is pretty terrifying, and often means that a lot of them don't have anywhere to live, and that's not the reality of kids who are lucky enough to be able to still be living at home. So I feel strongly about support to extend that to young people aged 21 years. I'm proud of the work that Council has done, and there are some examples here around the new outreach program, our Town Hall Avenue project, and the Kids Undercover project. And I particularly wanted to note those groups that are most likely to be at risk, including women who are fleeing family violence, young people, including young LGBTIQ people, and also older women over 55. It's challenging because of the barriers they might be facing in getting work. So I hope that the committee will read this and consider it, and we can make a valuable contribution to this inquiry that will hopefully lead to action. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Amir. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Messina.
I just want to take a moment to say thank you for the officers for the submission, Councillor Newton and Councillor Mayor, and your statements. I want to take a moment to focus on older women, those aged 55 and over. It is the fastest growing cohort of people experiencing homelessness in Australia. Between the time of 2011 and 2016 is an increase of 31%. That's 6,866 homeless older women in Australia, 5,820 living in marginal homes. All of these levels of government must be focusing on prevention, early intervention and tertiary response, addressing social determinants and drivers to focus on policy, research and advocacy. Also, what we need to be addressing is transitional and housing, also tenancy support programs, provision for emergency relief, case management and crisis accommodations. Homelessness is increasing and requires urgent action. There is a tsunami coming of women over 55 and over, homeless, especially in that area, and we need some urgent action.
Thank you, Councillor Messina. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Mayor. I also would like to speak in favour of this motion, but I also have an amendment which will come up on the screen shortly.
Is that... It looks to me to be the same. Maybe I'm missing something.
No, it's...
So we'll just take our time and make sure we've got... to include it.
Mayor, if you like, I may just start by speaking in relation to...
Sorry, before you speak, we have to deal with the amendment. So I'll just make sure people have read and understood that amendment. I'll then ask the mover and the seconder if they accept the amendment. And Councillor Greco, if you can just confirm that that is reading in the way you expect as well. Okay, so Councillor Greco, it's been pointed out that we actually need a statement endorsing the submission subject to that change. So...
that's the additional point too.
So this is an additional point.
So it could just follow on from the...
okay, so point one would be as per the agenda, and that would be point two.
Yep.
I'm happy to accept that.
So that's been accepted by the mover. Just check with the seconder. And that's been accepted by the seconder. So we note that that is point two and that the previous statement is point one. We'll just make sure we get that before we continue. Okay. So Councillor Greco, thank you for the amendment. It's been accepted, so you may now speak to the motion.
Okay, I'll just speak in relation to the motion now in its entirety. Look, I thank the mover and the seconder for including this point. This additional point in the motion. Look, I don't want to cover the points that have already been covered by other councillors, just to make the point that the system is failing the community in terms of homelessness. Often what gets projected in the community is that people are failing, but it's a systemic failure, both at the first tier of government and the second tier of government in particular, in regards to providing adequate basic human right, which is people having a roof over their head. As a result of that, and I'll just talk now specifically in relation to the amendment that I've put forward, is that this council has been lobbying very, very hard, particularly in our municipality, where the state governments of all persuasions in the past have been selling public housing estates under an accounting formula of cost neutrality by selling off land to private investors in order to rebuild public housing estates. Land is very precious, particularly in inner cities. Once that land disappears and that land goes into private hands, it makes it really, really difficult for any government to reacquire that land for public housing. Public housing is not an issue that just goes away in one generation. Public housing is an issue that has persisted with us for many generations, and that's why public land that has been destined for public housing must be retained in public hands for the future needs of people in regards to public housing. So I support the submission, and I also support the work that has been done by our officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Lyons.
Mayor Rennie, thank you for the opportunity to speak to this motion. Look, I'm speaking in favour of the motion primarily because it echoes the Homelessness Council request for 3,000 new public housing units every year for 10 years, because that kind of effort of stock needs to be done urgently. We've had a recent commitment at a State Labor Council conference to 1,600 units, which is up on previous promises from the previous election. So we're moving the right direction. But every special need, whether it be over 55 females, domestic violence victims, or mental illness residents, homeless people, requires specialised services, and the main blockage is there simply isn't enough stock. Some of our permanent stock, which is leaving people tens of thousands on waiting lists, is used for temporary stock. So there's an overall just absence of stock. In Darebin itself, we're now even below the state average of public housing. So we cannot sell any more public housing land or public housing in Darebin, and I commend Councillor Greco's motion on that. I'm slightly conflicted in this motion because I'm put a submission myself that is critical of council sitting on land and land banking for PPPs, imaginary ones, and not getting on with the 10,000 square metres out here that could have already been housing thousands of people. I'm also critical of council not adopting, as UK cities have, zero rough sleeping policies to link up with charities and clear the streets of people sleeping in winter. So my submission is actually going to argue for all state taxes on properties to be diverted at an adequate level to address the whole funding gap, and to mandate rough sleeping projects for every council, and to compulsory acquire council land that's being wasted.
Thank you, Councillor Lyons. Are there any further speakers? No? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That motion is passed unanimously. We'll note that that was unanimously passed, please. Thank you particularly to all those officers who worked on that submission. That brings us to the end of consideration of reports. We're now at consideration of responses to petitions, notices of motion and general business. There are none, so that brings us to item 10, notices of motion. There is one, 10.1, logging in Melbourne's water catchments. Councillor McCarthy.
Mayor, I have some updated words which our officers should have, which appear on screen.
Okay, so I'll just
make sure that it's...
We'll just check that the words are as expected. I'm assuming those are taking into account some prior suggestions by Councillor Lyons.
Sorry, point 8 is actually...
Yes. So we just need to renumber. We've got 2 sevens.
Yeah, point 8 shouldn't exist at the bottom, and point 7 should be point 8.
Councillor McCarthy, does that...
Yeah, no, that's yep, that's correct.
Thank you. So that's moved by Councillor McCarthy and seconded by Councillor Lyons. Councillor McCarthy.
Look, thank you, Mayor, and apologies, councillors. The events of recent days have meant that there was both a need to update this motion in light of the injunction that occurred literally this week, which is a significant occurrence, but also obviously the opportunity to look at how we strengthen the opportunity for those workers who, should this position be adopted by the state government or consideration be given, will need a future pathway to work. I won't speak on that. I believe that Councillor Lawrence will touch on those points. What I did want to address is the central tenet of this motion, which is that on the back of the recent fires that have obviously devastated Victoria, and I don't think I need to go through that in any detail. I think we're all well aware of what's taken place. This has only brought to greater attention the risk that we face on another front, which is not necessarily just the loss of species, of habitat, of businesses, and the devastation wreaked on nature and community, but also the flow-on impacts from the severe fires that we're experiencing, were they to also make their way into Melbourne's water catchments. And as councillors would be aware, the water that Melbourne actually relies upon largely is from water catchments that are located outside the Melbourne metropolitan area, but which are in fact part of zones that can continue to be logged, mostly for pulp type products, and it is not a high value product that is taken from these areas, but it is a high value environment in terms of retaining water. And one of the greatest risks, as has been identified by various experts going back over a number of years and more recently, is that the risk to our water supply in Melbourne is significant should these water catchments catch fire, and of course the contamination through ash pollution, the loss of course and the shutdown of reservoirs. Just over the break I visited the Maroondah Reservoir, which was one of those reservoirs that actually was impacted by the 2009 Black Saturday fires, and whilst it is regenerating and there is obviously some improvement there, the reality is that reservoir stopped providing water to Melbourne, and we just have to imagine what would happen if Thomson Dam, which accounts for almost half of all of the water that Melbourne metropolitan areas rely upon, was to be beset by fires. We'd have a devastating situation. The economics are very clear, and councillors would have been provided with information about that, which is that the value of the water is over and above, overwhelmingly more valuable economically and in terms of jobs, tourism and water safety, health and security than the actual product at the moment. So Councillor Lawrence, I'm sure, will be able to touch on the jobs aspect, which is also really important. We need a plan going forward, but we need water security in this state, and that has to be part of any package, and hence the request to write to the Premier on this occasion, and of course to write to our other councils in Melbourne metropolitan area and our local members. Hope you can support it.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank Councillor McCarthy for bringing this to the attention of the council in terms of water catchment logging, which I'm sure is an issue that affects every metro council in relation to Thomson Dam and other dams. But I'll just speak more to point C, because I'm aware we live in such an environment in Darebin where we have 600,000 jobs in the CBD near us. We have 15,000 manufacturing jobs in our own city, in fact, so many that we actually supply 8,000 jobs to Whittlesea. And we have a range of jobs in job hubs here. We're sitting between Northlands, Austin Hospital and La Trobe Uni. So we come to this question about adjustment and transition from a point of privilege. And I'm sort of painfully aware of that. We want these issues taken to MAV, and we need to have regional councils on board. So in terms of the $120 million package, in terms of going to plantation forestry, this motion doesn't address that. It acknowledges that is being a process mapped out by the Premier. But this motion adds an additional request for a jobs transition plan in the public sphere, where there are possibilities for a downsized or, there may be collapses of forestry industries because they may be over-reliant on old growth, and there may be a lapse in production right now. So there may need to be public sector job interventions now, and we've listed here 3 areas, obviously emergency services, the paid firefighting roles that are in Vic Forests and other departments, the paid firefighting roles within the CFA itself, and I've also listed other roles that might be to do with state government land management workforces across the state.
Thank you, that's time, Councillor Lawrence.
So we're trying to make some positive suggestions about jobs in the regions.
Thank you. Are there further speakers? Councillor Messina.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy, for putting this as a motion, and your words also, Councillor Lawrence. This summer, there was more than a physical fog that lingered over us. There was also the haze on the debate on the words climate emergency, climate action, climate change. Our traditional summer of celebrating with family and friends has been clouded with disastrous bushfires that have ravaged our treasured flora and fauna and taken precious lives. Australia is the driest, largest inhabited continent in the world and highly vulnerable. When the media and leaders want to debate on the word climate emergency, are we having one, are we not, what we need to do is bring all parties and stakeholders along the journey with us. Rather than splitting and dividing, we need to collectively walk the path together, and perhaps we need to put aside our differences and start the conversation on investing on our future. We need to invest on our future, the future of the Aussie backyard, and we need to wake up together before it's too late.
Thank you, Councillor Messina. Are there any further speakers? There being none, I'll put that...
I would just note, sorry, Mayor, I just noted that January should actually be February in the first point. They're still going.
To February. Okay, so
Just to be accurate.
we'll just take that
as
as done, yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? No. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That motion was carried unanimously. I'll ask that the officers record that as a unanimous decision for the minutes. That brings us to item 11, reports of standing committees. There are none. So item 12 is records of assemblies of councillors. That's moved by Councillor Lasserf, seconded by Councillor Messina. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Reports by Mayor and councillors. That's moved by Councillor Lasserf, seconded by Councillor Williams. All those in favour? Sorry, Councillor Lawrence, was that hand up? Yes?
I haven't got my report, which I sent through late.
I'll just seek some clarification that we've now got Councillor Lawrence's report. Councillor Lawrence, what we will do is make sure that if it wasn't captured now, it will be captured, it will be caught and captured for the next meeting. Okay, thank you. We'll double check that. That brings us to item 4.
We didn't vote on that properly. We've got to vote.
Thank you. I thought I had voted, but no, we'll do that again. So I had a mover, Councillor Lasserf, seconded by Councillor Williams. All those in favour? That is moved. Thank you. That brings us to item 14, consideration of reports considered confidential. There is a confidential item. So yes, Councillor Lasserf.
I'd like to move a motion that we close the meeting to the public to consider the confidential item.
Thank you, and that's seconded by Councillor Messina. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Thank you very much to members of the gallery who have come along tonight. The item that we're now discussing is a confidential item, so I'll have to ask for you to leave the chamber.